Hi, everybody. This is just a reminder that our annual meeting is coming up this Thursday and Friday, October 5th and 6th at the UCCS Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs. This is going to be amazing agenda. We have amazing sponsors to help us out.
And our sponsors are, our main sponsor is Xcel Energy, but UCCS is also a sponsor and our gracious host, allowing us to have this at their facility. Connect for Health Colorado, IBEW, Pinnacle, Adam Frisch for Colorado, Comcast, Black Hills, Much Government Relations, and AT&T.
You can still get your tickets at our website at www.action22.org and see the agenda for both days.
Yep. So hope to see you there.
Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Making Action Happen. I'm Sara Blackhurst.
And I'm Brian McCain.
And I have missed the last couple of shows, and so it's nice.
Yep.
It's been a while since I've been in here.
Yeah, last two.
The last two, yeah.
The kid back to school sickness going.
Oh, my gosh.
I had it for a day. I dodged it. Didn't quite dodge it.
Knock on wood.
It just grazed me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's that. And then the episode that you did with Tommy Ferguson was just really, really good. And I was glad that you did that one.
Yeah.
I was listening to it and I was a little emotional. There's no way I could have sat here with him and not been overcome with that. That was such cool.
He's doing really good work. And like I said, I've known him for a while and, still tries to get me to go skydiving every time. After that, he's like, "Oh, skydiving?" I'm like, "No, I'm fine. I'm good." But I think our friend Paul is going to go with him.
Oh, my Lanta. Of course, Paul's going to go.
Well, I mean, and technically it's not like really with him. It's you jump on your own, like he's saying. So he's just there for moral support. So our friend Paul Hendrickson is he's a veteran and he does a lot of really great work. He's the head of the Pueblo Veterans Council or something like that now. Yeah, the Pueblo Veterans Council. Yeah, so he's great. And I'll tell you, I know he's gone skydiving before. I am wildly uncomfortable with it, but of course he'll do that again. So that was a great episode. And then Ty Winter was on as well, Representative Winter, and he's one of my favorites. He's just such a good guy, so authentic, and has such a heart for doing the job of representing rural and southern Colorado. Yeah. So I think that we're going to be working with him for a long, long, long time, even long after he is done with he's termed out, but he's got one more, right? Yeah, that was his first. So no, because he's every 2 years because he's a rep. So he's every 2 years. More. Oh, does he? Okay. Yeah, I think that's how it works. It's either 3 or 4 terms. I always forget. I get confused.
It feels like a really long time.
Anybody watching the video, I moved the lights, and it looks like there's shadow people behind us on the video. I just noticed that.
It's shadow, that's like Peter Pan.
I'm going to get it one day. We need like a bigger space and better camera, but we'll get that eventually.
Well, and we're kind of working on that. So at this time every year, there's a little bit of a organizational existential crisis that happens, and it's around our annual meeting. And I didn't really think about that until the beautiful, wonderful Ashley Valdez brought it up to me the other day. I was having trying to.
It's like a party in here. Lights are flashing.
There you go. I was having a conversation with her, and she's always one of those that I go to, one of those other leaders that I go to when I'm just trying to get my brain and my emotions wrapped around whatever we're working on. And she said, "You do this every single year around the annual meeting where you second guess yourself, and then it turns out to be an amazing meeting that's completely different from anything else that anybody does. And at the end of it, everybody leaves feeling like renewed and their battery charged and they're ready to do that." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so good to hear. And she's right. Every year I do the same thing. So we did that again this year, because I think the problem that we have is I'm never quite satisfied. I guess that's just the cowboy in me. So I always look at our mission and say, okay, what can we do more? What can we do better? How do we use the resources or what we've already built and do more and really take that to the next level? So we always announce what that's going to be and what that's going to look like at the next annual meeting. and you're going to do that. But
it seems like I've done that all 3 years, the last 3 annual meetings.
Well, that's how long you've been with us.
Yeah.
So it's something new, and we push. I just push and push, because I look at everything that's going on. And I was having a conversation with again, one of our board members, and I just have such a wonderful relationship with our board. But Gary Amella, who's a Pueblo guy, but he works for Comcast. I was talking to him this morning, and I was telling him that I was a little bit worried about you, because you had several losses this last week.
Yeah, everybody did, actually.
And everybody did. Yeah, it's been a weird week, because we know just about everybody I know has had some kind of a major loss this week.
Yeah, I chalk it up to age, because I always said that, you go through high school, not to get dark and depressed on our show. You go through school, like up to high school, and generally in your life, somebody that's connected to you, close to you, not even close, but like a classmate or something, will pass away. And it sucks. And I had to talk to my daughter about it, because they had a friend that passed away and all this. And then it's weird, because then you go through your 20s, and then when you get to your late 20s, it happens to somebody like one of your friends. Like,
right.
It's always like something out of the blue, like a random happenstance.
Right.
And then around 28, you lose somebody that's close to you. And then it's interesting, because then you go through your 30s, and every now and then you'll have somebody somebody that's close, or a family member, gets sick and passes away. Or, we had COVID that hit a lot of people too. And then when you get into your 40s, your mid 40s, that's when you start to see this more and more loss to these people you're connected to. And it's kind of part of growing old.
Right.
This is like the first step, because anybody that's older, like a grandparent, 70s, 80s or whatever, they talk about that. It's kind of comes in waves, comes in cycles, but I think that really starts when you start to see like more loss in your life, like around your 40s.
Right.
That's when it hits.
So that it's interesting that you say that, because Gary asked me how old you were.
Yeah.
And I told him, and he said when he was in his mid 40s, that he had lost 7 friends in 1 year.
Yeah.
And it was really, really hard. And so he said, well, did that happen to you? I said, I didn't lose a huge number of friends, but I lost my dad. Mm-hmm. And then a year later, I lost my best friend cousin.
Yep.
And so I said, it is weird that you say that, because that's exactly what Gary and I were talking about in your mid 40s, that you have this big loss, and then it sort of kicks you into this, okay, what's are we at the top of the hill now?
I know.
Where does that go?
The gallows humor. It's like, well, get used to it. They're going to start dropping like flies.
Oh, I know.
But also too, really when you hit your 40s, is if you haven't really taken care of yourself, that's when it starts to catch up with you. You're invincible in your 20s, 30s. You start to feel it a bit. But if you don't change your lifestyle, whether it's, exercise, diet, extremely
stress,
bad habits,
stress.
Bad habits. A lot of people I know in bands, they make it till about 40 and then that's it. But, that's when it catches up to you when you hit like 40, 45. That's when it's weird, because you start to realize you're getting old when you start to have friends that are your age have heart attacks.
Oh yeah.
And that hits about late 30s. That's when I started to see some of my friends. And I'm like, well, man, you can't eat Carl's Jr. 3 times a day for 5 years and not expect something like that to happen. But
for sure.
And also I worked in a bar, or owned a bar for a while, and you see it with your regulars. That one always trips me out, because I'll run into people, and I don't hardly go out at all. Like we'll go to like a restaurant bar type place for dinner, me and my wife or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I ran that bar and owned that bar for about 6 to 8 years, somewhere in there, worked off and on before I bought it. And it's interesting, because the regulars that sat at that bar, like the Cheers, the Cheers crew,
right.
They're still doing the same thing. And then I didn't see them for like 5 years, and I run to them like, holy cow, you have aged a lot. But then every time I've been to a bar, they're sitting at the bar in the same place with the same people, drink the same thing. And that's like, maybe you got to kind of do some self-reflection, because it's going to catch up. And right now is when it catches up.
So along that vein, I think there's been a lot of self-reflection for my part on not only leadership, because we've been pushing that for the last couple of years, and it's really how do we continue after COVID. And so, COVID was a good solid 2 years. It was 20 and 21, and it seeped into 22 a little bit.
And kind of coming back now, you're starting to see.
You're starting to see
a push for going back to some of the COVID regulations.
Oh.
But I don't think people are going to accept that as well as it was in the past, maybe in some areas, but anyway, I would give it 2.5 years. It was a 2.5 year chunk where we were dealing with this stuff. Actually, we're still dealing with it, especially with like some offices still operate under COVID stuff, or they're working at home more and more.
Oh, yeah.
Like federal offices where can't get a hold of anybody for your Social Security.
And I have a friend I have a couple of friends that still work from home. And I think, oh my gosh, how do you do that? But they say, like, if you have a bad breakup or something like that, where it's kind of a life-changing thing, however long you went through it, that's how long it takes you to recover. So it would make sense that, we're starting to, it was 2 years, and now we're coming up on the 2-year mark of sort of that recovery piece.
Yep.
But what I'm seeing, I think that I've seen a lot, I've noticed a lot, and I have felt a lot myself, and I know you have felt it probably in the last year, or maybe even more in the last 6 months or so, is a weariness that you see in leadership.
Yes. People are burnt out.
They are burnt out.
Leaders are burnt out. Which is interesting because there's some that aren't burnt out that are like holding on as long as they can. But part of that too could be that there's no younger leadership to take their place.
I think that's part of it.
I think that's a part of it too. But everybody, and I've known them for 15 years that may have not been leaders at the beginning, but now are in like these CEO positions or corporate, or what do you call it? Executive level positions,
right?
Government, like upper management type stuff. And you see it on me. I think since we started this, my hair is like twice as gray.
Oh my gosh.
And,
I look at pictures
I know.
of myself when we first started, and I'm like, I am so much older now than I was.
They are all burnt out. Like when I get together with these people, they're just like, I'm burnt out. And one thing I ask is like, well, who's going to do it? Who are you looking at to replace you, whatever? And they're like, I don't know yet. Haven't figured that part out yet.
Yeah. And what's next, right?
Yep.
So we're talking about right now, I'm older than you are. So right now I'm looking at, I turn 50 in December. So I'm one of these people who I'm going to own my age. I'm just going to say it. I turn 50 in December. And so for me as a woman, I have to genuinely look at the field and go, what's my shelf life as a woman? And how often, like how many women do we know like that are still relevant into their 60s? So I'm looking at it like I've got 10 years to really make sure that everything's in place, because the women that are past 60 and are still relevant and still in it, I just deeply, deeply admire. But then again, to your point, like how do we build this, and how do we make sure that we're not burning leaders out, we're not burning people out, so they're just throwing out their hands? Because I'm not going to name names, but I can give you 10 people off the top of my head in 2023 who have resigned a leadership position or moved on to something that's less stressful, all of those things. So either they've just completely given it up, moved out of state, or they've gone to different things, or they've resigned their position. There's a bunch of them. And these are important. These were important leaders.
Yeah, but I also think that that's with every generation, because I remember talking to people older than me that were in this when I was younger, and they had that burnout too. And they kind of had that confusion, like who's going to replace me? So I don't think it's anything new. I think it's a little more so right now. And I think the COVID stuff had a lot to do with that, because a lot of the leaders, while everybody couldn't work and they're stressing out and freaking out, there were the people, like we'll call them essential employees, but essential leaders that still had to work through that. And they picked up like 5 times the work that they would normally do because everybody was at home or couldn't come into work, the lockdowns, all the fun stuff that we went through with COVID. So I think there's always been that career burnout for leadership, but at the same time, I think it's a little worse now than it has been in the past.
No, I agree with you. So just to give you kind of a snapshot that's not very personal, but definitely is a pretty good indication. Rick Klein sent this to me this morning. He's our board chair and he is the city manager for La Junta. He sent me this article from Colorado Newsline. Half of Coloradoans will have a new county clerk for 2024 elections. So think about that. So as we go into, we have a hiatus of 1 year where there's not, there's still election stuff going on.
Is that due to them just being there for 20 years and finally not running again? Or is this just they're not going to run again? Or are there term limits in these counties? Or is it just...
There was that much turnover in the last election.
Wow.
In the midterms.
But let me go look at it this way. Was that because, as we saw in these last elections, a lot of the incumbents lost? Was it for lack of them not running, or was it because they lost because they were incumbents and people just wanted something new?
So this is what it said. And this is from, we want to give the credit. This was from Colorado Newsline. That is according to a new report from the nonpartisan group Issue 1, which studied election official turnover since 2020 in 11 Western states. In total, it found that 160 top election officials left their job in the past 3 years since the onslaught of misinformation following the 2020 presidential election.
So that's interesting. So they're burnt out. So they're county clerks that are like, so we had some technical difficulties, i.e. I forgot to plug in the camera. So now we're back.
Okay. So in Colorado, 24 of the 64 counties will have clerks next year who are different than the ones who administered the 2020 elections. About 48% of the state's residents live in those counties.
I think that's because, as we know in that election, it was very opinionated on both sides of it. From the election was stolen. Let's see the votes. You're stealing votes, or no, they're not doing it. It was very loud from both sides.
Yeah.
And I think the county clerk's job, and I know county clerks, it's pretty stress-free job, right? I mean, they run the DMV
right.
very slowly.
Right.
They're kind of chill. And then they, scatter around an election and it's stressful, but they have that one stressful month of the year, or every 2 years or whatever the elections cycle is that they're working on. But I think that the last election, specifically the 2020 and even going up to 2022, I think they were in that kind of stress, dealing with a lot of stuff. Political stuff, protesters, not protest, just people in general angry for 2 years straight, 3 years straight, 4 years straight. So I totally do not find them at fault for not
I don't find them at fault either.
I know my father-in-law worked in the election department and he quit. I think it was when Trump won. It was that election, that presidential election where Trump won the election. He quit 2 days after. And he said half the department quit. They were like, we're done. We quit.
We're done. Yeah. Well, but you heard of death threats and you heard of craziness.
And I don't think county clerks were used to that. And then all of a sudden that happened.
Well, I don't think that. So county clerks and these local government officials are in a weird sort of, I don't want to say bubble, but a weird snow globe.
Yes.
Where it shouldn't be there shouldn't be a party affiliation. They should be nonpartisan, and that should be a big part of the job.
Yeah.
But we're moving away from that. You see it with county clerks. We're watching this right now with county commissioners.
Yeah.
All of these things that shouldn't be partisan are turning out to be very partisan. School boards.
Oh, yeah.
All the really local stuff
I think a lot of it's been partisan, but county clerk, the way I look at it, like the coroner is like really the most nonpartisan office because nobody wants to see the coroner.
And why is that elected? But it is a partisan.
There is a reason for why the coroner can't talk today is elected, and I totally forgot it, but
because we looked this up.
Yeah, we looked it up. There's a purpose for why that's an elected office. But when you get into like the sheriff and even the county clerk and some of these like the county assessor, stuff like that, and I think those should be nonpartisan. Like city council's nonpartisan, the mayor's nonpartisan.
Right.
I mean, obviously there's partisan politics with it, but it's a nonpartisan race. But it's interesting that, the head law enforcement guy or girl for the community is a partisan race because I don't think politics should come to play with how much my property's worth, how the budget is managed, and how the laws are enforced, and how an election is run. I think those should be really nonpartisan, but they're not. And again, we looked it up for the coroner.
I can't remember.
And I think that that's similar for the sheriff and everybody else that there's a reason for it, and I can't remember. I'll look it up and post it underneath. But
I can't remember what it was. But we're even seeing a lot of departure from the nonprofit, or non-elected officials are struggling with just trying to keep it together from that leadership position and really knowing how to bring in raise up the next group or how to do that in a way that is effective. And I think, and I've got to say it, I think the other part of it is we've gotten into such a quagmire with identity politics and political correctness and wokeness that I think there's a fear of even trying to help somebody move on to the next thing. So because no matter what you do, you're going to be wrong. And then the rules are going to change next week for you anyway.
I want to see, so that's an elected position. I want to see what the turnover rate for city and county managers is. Right
it's huge.
Because that's either appointed or it's just a normal job application, but it's still usually confirmed by the commissioners or the city council or mayor or whatever. I want to see what the turnover of that is in the past 5 years versus that would be a really interesting. But I know, somebody told me not too long ago, maybe it was Rick that told me that there were something like, it was an unbelievable number of city manager or county manager positions that were open in Colorado, and then nationwide it was because they were trying to recruit people. We know a couple people that they tried to recruit them out of Colorado to go to other states.
Well, yeah. And as soon as you get them to a certain a leadership level, that's the other part too. Yes. As soon as you develop somebody is going to, there's such a need for that skills part. So this was my big idea is, I wanted us to have a genuine conversation about how to, really charge the battery of leaders and make them understand. So the theme of our annual meeting this year is why your leadership matters. Now we've got some really cool things going on around that. But I'm going to say the big headliner, the thing that I'm most excited to announce and make sure everybody knows about is we've got Adam Frisch as our keynote speaker about energy, because you've heard it on the show before. I am in the middle of all these energy discussions right now, and I am not an expert. I am not any kind of a physicist. My degree is not in that, but because energy policy is so impactful. But in Southern Colorado, it's the whole game, right?
Yes. And the thing about Adam doing this as kind of the keynote speaker is he's in an interesting position because he is running for Congress. He is a political candidate.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most nationally watched races.
Right.
The number one issue in the district is energy. He comes from the side of the aisle politically that has not necessarily seen eye to eye with the district when it comes to energy policy. Mm-hmm. So he's really done a deep dive, done all of his research, knows more than most. Like from when he started running, when he first came on the show, like he is night and day different about what he knows and understands about energy policy and how it impacts specifically rural Colorado. But again, he's in a weird spot because I think a lot of his views kind of contradict the political side that he's running on for office.
So let me say this, and I am unapologetically.
And that's not a bad thing. I'm not. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's
I'm unapologetically fiercely nonpartisan, and anybody who's worked with me at all knows that. But Adam and I were having a conversation not too long ago because I was so, the first time that he was in and did the show with us, and we didn't know him very well. Yeah. He talked about what his view was on energy, or what his position sort of was. And it wasn't like officially, here's my position, blah, blah, blah. But he was like, this was his theory or his philosophy around energy. I was so taken back by what he said. I was speechless in the middle of the show. Do you know how often it happens to me that I'm speechless? Like almost never. So then we had him to come back and talk a little bit more about it. But a couple months ago when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with the annual meeting. Adam and I were talking, and I said, I really want to have this energy conversation, and I want to have the tough energy conversations, yes. The one that nobody else is brave enough to have. I want to be talking about this. And he said something to me that I carry around, and I think about it almost every single day when I'm talking about energy with somebody. And he said, the problem that we have with energy policy is we don't really have a strategy or plan in Colorado or the country that's reasonable. But this is what he said that I carry around. He said, one side can't wrap their brain around the science, and the other side can't wrap their brain around the math. Mm-hmm. And until we have that conversation and get both sides to wrap their brain around both the science and both the math, we're going to be in a lot of trouble real quick.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. When he said that, it's like, that makes perfect sense. And part of it, too, is that we have, our main sponsor for the annual meeting is Xcel Energy.
Right.
And we're doing an energy panel. And for the producers, the energy industry in general, they have to be really careful about what they say and what they put out there. So it's hard for them to have that conversation. And I think Adam coming in and doing this both as a political candidate and somebody that's vested in this and has researched it is perfect to have, because he could say whatever he wants.
He can say whatever he wants.
And for good and bad, he could say something.
But he's going to be honest about it. He's going to say,
going to be honest.
He's going to be, and I want him to do this now because I don't know how free he's going to be to do that once the campaign actually starts.
Yeah. And he's been a great supporter of Action 22.
Oh my gosh,
It has nothing to do with the race that he's in. I've known him even prior to Action 22, and he likes what we're doing, and he's been very supportive of us. And he thinks that what our mission is very important for rural Colorado.
Well, and I think he likes it because we are so nonpartisan. We're gonna address the issues and not serve parties. Yeah. So I think that's the other thing that I hear. So one of the great gifts that we have in what we do and being Action 22 is that we get to have real honest conversations with a lot of leaders, elected and non-elected. And one of the things, and I think we take it for granted, honestly. We ask for advice. We are asked for advice a lot. We have these conversations, and we have them with both sides. And I think the thing that I hear that's a contributor to the wariness more than anything is that it's impossible to do that, to be in those positions without also having to try to serve parties. So you're really, you can't ride two horses with one ass. And so serving communities and serving the party and getting into the position of leadership, that is exhausting.
Yes, it is.
And no matter what, there's always people who are going to try to play the game, try to gain the advantage. And the thing that I have the hardest time with is, the need to add burden to our local leaders and to our communities. And these guys are not in it to be the big star. They are genuinely serve. Our rural leaders serve because they love their communities.
I agree. So with that, again, just a reminder, our annual meeting is coming up this Thursday and Friday. Starts at noon on Thursday and ends at 7. We have a reception from 5 to 7. So it's noon to 5 and then reception 5 to 7. And then starts up again Friday morning at 8 a.m. and ends at noon. So you're out by lunch.
So let me tell you, talk about the venue. This is really cool. We did something a little different this year.
So we're having it at the UCCS Cybersecurity Building. And what it is it's the Kevin O'Neill Cybersecurity Building.
Yeah, but it's the National Cybersecurity Center.
Cybersecurity Center. And it's with UCCS. We're having it in there. People will be working in there while we're in there. So there's classes going on. There's companies working.
Yeah.
And we're going to have it there. It's going to be a blast. We're going to offer tours to anybody that attends. And then the reception will head over to the NT building or ENT. Is it ENT or ENT?
It's ENT.
Like, I never know what to say, and I've heard it both ways. So for a little psych reference for anybody out there, I've heard it both ways. So 5 to 7, we're going just up the road to the Performing Arts Building at UCCS, and we'll have some drinks and some hors d'oeuvres and some refreshments and just network. And then we're kicking it off the next morning
with a breakfast. This is really, really cool. Wes Parham is putting together Wes is with Pinnacle, and he's putting together an amazing education to work breakfast. There's a coalition that he's put together, and he's bringing in some really cool people. And I don't know everybody, but I'm hearing what he's doing. And so we'll have that breakfast the next morning. Then we'll have some discussions about leadership or about energy. Oh, and we're also having on Thursday, there's a discussion on Prop HH, both sides. I'm getting multiple calls a day. Where's Action 22 on this? We're not going to take a position until after we hear both sides at the annual meeting, and then our board will take a position after that.
Which, if you are a locally elected leader, county manager, city manager, county commissioner, you have to listen to this. Yeah. And I think I'm going to try to film some of it or live stream it. So that'll be the one to watch. This is going to be all your facts and pros and cons about HH, because this gets brought up in every conversation we have.
Yeah. Right now, it's such an important issue, and it's got such sweeping effects, and you better know what you're voting for or against on that.
So if you want to learn more, again, it's this Thursday. It starts this Thursday. If you're listening to this on Monday, Thursday, October 5th and Friday, October 6th, go to action22.org. It's right on the landing page. You could get your tickets there. There's multiple options depending on what you want to do. If you just want to go to the reception, you could do that. If you want to go to the everything, you can do that. So just go to action22.org. Email us at show@action22.org if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. And if you want to join Action 22, shoot me an email at that as well, or just go to our website. And just since we got to do it, it's that time. And I did it on the last one and the one before that. The views and opinions on Making Action Happen do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Action 22, its board, or its membership. And we do not endorse candidates in an election, but we support our members. And if you're an Action 22 member running for office, you have an open invitation to come on the show and tell us what you're about.
One more thing, I have to give a shout out to Comcast and Dwayne Nava. I was deeply honored to be asked, and I will be moderating the Pueblo City Council debates and the mayoral debate while the reception's going on. Yeah, during the reception, Brian and Micah and William Much and Sally Clark and all of our amazing folks up in Colorado Springs will be hosting that. William Much is hosting the reception, but I will be down here doing those debates, and it's going to be interesting. And you will, if you're not at the reception with us, you can watch those debates on the PCC channel, I think.
Yep.
So you'll be able to live stream that. And I was just wanted to give a shout out to those guys for putting all that together. And again, deeply honored to be asked to be the moderator for that. So
with that, we'll get back to you right after the annual meeting.
All right. See you then.
See ya.